Okay, we're talking today about the lesson that we just observed, and it was a great lesson on volcanoes, and I could tell it was kind of a review lesson that they had been over this before. So, one of the things I was wondering is, how did you choose that activity for the standard that you were covering?
Well, with volcanoes, there's several topics that in our course of study it wants the students to learn. So I was trying to figure out what I thought would be maybe the best way for them to kind of continue reviewing it over and over to see if it would stick, if they would really get it. So we did some basic information, and then we did a quiz throughout kind of going over that information. And then I set up these projects. And with the projects, everything that they had to research was one of the standards, the things that they're required to know about volcanoes. So there was an individual part where they would research it, and I was helping guide to see if they could locate the information they needed to know. And it helped me to be more individual based with them, to know who knew what. And then we'd meet with them periodically, go over that information, and then now we're moving to the group phase. So the whole project and everything we've done over the last 2 weeks was completely from the standards, and I was just trying to find a way to make sure the kids were engaged all the time and kind of responsible for their own learning, instead of them just kind of listening to someone else, or it was more individual based with the project.
Well, one of the things I noticed today is that every kid was engaged, and they seemed to really remember the things that were going on, and they seemed engaged. And I think it was because they were engaged. It's why they remembered all that. And the thing that I liked is there was a lot of structure there, and you told them exactly what they needed to do for group work and how they needed to structure it out. You didn't tell them their roles, but you gave them the roles and gave them a rubric to set up to do that, so that they didn't just wander aimlessly through that. So I thought that was really good, the structure on it. And you could tell that it was well thought out. After you've taught this lesson, I know y'all haven't done the group projects yet, but you're probably about halfway through.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything that you see that you would have changed?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's one reason I did develop the rubric, because when we first started, I had given them kind of a timeline and a rubric about their individual project. And one thing I would do differently is probably with some of my Tier 2 students, I would narrow down their choices immediately, like by giving them, I gave the students kind of, they could present it in a brochure, PowerPoint. I gave them a multitude of ways they could select from. And going back again, with my Tier 2, I would probably talk to them about 2 different ways and let them choose between the 2. I ended up meeting, I ended up meeting with each one of them and helping them pick, but I would have probably just gone into it with them just having 2 choices, helping them narrow it down, and I possibly would have given them their 3 resources that they could just go to those. Instead of I gave a list, and the kids were manipulating those really well, but I think for my Tier 2, that may have just been a little overwhelming. So I kind of went back and adjusted that.
One of the things I really liked, you mentioned assessment, was the sheet that had what you were going to look for in the final project when they do the entire group project. 10 points was going to be for this, 10 points for that, 10 points for that. I thought that was incredibly good, because I've done projects and it was very difficult to grade, and it was very difficult for them to know what to put in it. And so how did you assess this other than that, and talk a little bit about how you developed that?
Well, I developed it, like I said, from the standards. I looked at what standards were needed for them to know, and that's what I put on my rubric. And then I kind of fixed my points according to how much was including in each section. As far as assessing them, we did a basic study of volcanoes, very basic, because I kind of try to do a little mini lesson, and then I do something with it every time. So then when I was assessing them, I used my bell ringers a lot, because the types of volcanoes was a big part of what they're supposed to know, the 3 different types. So I would use those picture cards, and I would put different pictures on the board every day, and they would have to identify those through bell ringers. Then the card game, we had done a couple of times, and at first I had them doing the card game with just identifying them. Then I had them group the pictures, and that helped to give them a visual for when they maybe were incorrect. And then we also used those cards again when we were talking about the viscosity. So it kind of they just kept seeing that over and over. So then when we got to our quiz, they all did so well on it, because I had been constantly kind of assessing them as we were going. Just like we were talking about, instead of waiting for the big test, we were doing little assessments every day, even with their exit tickets and different things. I just kept asking those questions over and over, and it was like they knew it. So then when it came quiz time, they all really did very, very well. Even the ones who usually sometimes struggle, we'd just gone over it so much and assessing as we went through the lessons too.
And that's the beauty of formative assessment. You know what they don't know so that you can correct it.
Exactly, ahead of time. And even with my ELL student, I pulled her back and I was showing her those pictures, and I had put on sticky notes the 3 types and had her to identify those, and she could do it because we had just looked at those so much that she knew exactly which one was which, and that was a huge
And for your advanced learners, I noticed one of the questions during the lesson was about viscosity, and one of your students, I could tell, was a little more advanced students and maybe knew some facts about volcanoes that everyone else did not know, and you incorporated him by asking him to explain something that probably very few people in the room could have answered, but it helped him, but at the same time it helped share that information with the other students.
Exactly, because we talked about viscosity, and it is a hard concept to really understand, and we did with syrup, and we did examples, but a lot of the kids, they would still get backwards of when it had high viscosity or low. They would just get confused. And so my higher students were able to take the card game and not only identify what it was, but they could tell me what it was made of, and what viscosity it had, which helped them to, like you said, for even the advanced students.
Yeah, they really moved on. And of course, you know, one of the things that really impressed me, because as an administrator, we try to cut down on distractions, but there's always distractions. And, you know, we had kids coming in and out because of the beta club induction, but that went just seamlessly. I mean, everything just went smoothly, and they just, you know, it was no problem. But it had to have been well planned out and well thought, or it would have been a problem. And so everything was very organized. And kind of the last thing, do you think, because, you know, we're constantly looking for feedback from teachers on the things that we're doing, whether or not they're beneficial. The science PLT, do you think that those things have helped any to help do this type of learning?
I do. I mean, I think so. I think that with PLT, what I hope that we all as teachers understand, that we're there to help each other. It's not because we think we know everything. It's about sharing new ideas. And the meetings themselves have to constantly evolve. It's not the same thing every time. And I think we get to thinking, well, we've done that, check. But it's about constantly being better. And all of us have things to learn and improve on. And if we would get comfortable with that environment, where we don't mind sharing our weaknesses as well as ideas, it has helped me. And I think it's good to get that dialogue with other teachers to realize we do have the same concerns, but there are ideas that we can try to maybe make things better.
Okay. And then kind of the last thing, is there anything that you could have done differently about this lesson to do more student engagement? You know, there were tons of student engagement as they were going around, but is there anything that you saw that, hey, if I'd done this, they could have even done more?
Well, this particular activity today, like you said, it kind of does have everybody involved. I do want to make sure that, like when I was over with that one group, that everybody has a say-so in what type of volcano it is, and not just one person saying the other's just agreeing. You know, figuring out how to maybe, even if it is just a pair. Now, we have done it before where it was just by themselves, but, you know, just making sure that every group has that dialogue going in. And I know a lot of that comes with me just being present, being right, and helping them learn how to do that. But that's one thing I would fix. And when the kids are doing their presentations, as we were talking about engagement, since y'all have, you know, really thought about how do we know if they're engaged, when the groups do their presentations in the past, I haven't really had the other kids, you know, I've kind of thought about what could they be doing. So I'm going to try that when they're giving their presentations, have them a sheet of the different volcanoes that will be shared. And then when they present their volcano, to write down what type they said it was, what type of eruption, the 3 main standards that they have to know. And so I'm hoping that way, as they're presenting, they're having to listen and be engaged also. So that's one thing I'm going to try and hope that will be successful.
Well, that sounds great, and thank you so much.
Thank you.